Yeah, that we'd have quite an attendance for. If you remember, that's the night we walked over to the Alamo.
Oh yeah, I think I have some pictures from that.
Yeah.
All right, it is 1 o'clock, and I'm sure people will continue to jump on, but we'll go ahead and get started just so we have the full hour. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today on this lovely Friday. We just appreciate you taking the time out of your day. We know everyone is super busy. Just a few things before we get started, just a few introductions and housekeeping. My name is Claire McLemore, and I am one of our accounting marketing managers. And I am joined here today by Steve Schutz, who is our portfolio manager for accounting. And we have two wonderful guests with us. We have John Wild and Jonathan Wild, who will be our many teaching awards and is a past KPMG National Fellow. He focuses on teaching introductory financial and managerial accounting courses and has published several books, including Fundamental Accounting Principles, Managerial Accounting, and Financial Accounting. Jonathan is a CPA and earned his PhD at Oklahoma State University, and he currently teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Jonathan teaches courses in financial accounting, managerial accounting, and intermediate accounting. His research focuses on accounting transparency and corporate social responsibility. And he previously worked at PwC in assurance services. So we are very excited to have them here with us today. And so again, we just appreciate you taking the time. Just a few housekeeping things before we jump in. Everyone has been turned on mute just to limit some of the background noise. So if you have any questions or comments, please use either the chat or the Q&A. If you do choose to use the chat, there is a little thing it says send to, and then there's a drop down. If you could either send it to everyone or all panelists, that will ensure that not only I will receive the question, but that Steve, John, and Jonathan will all receive the questions. And we just want to ensure that we're getting to all of them as they come in. We'll also be doing a few poll questions throughout the event. So if you wouldn't mind, when it pops up, you'll be able to enter in your answer, and we would love for you to participate in those. We'll also be recording this and see, you'll be able to do that as well. So just before we dive in, we want to give you a quick overview of the titles that this webinar will be covering, just to help lay some of that groundwork before we jump in. So you'll see within the Wild series, you have a lot of different options to fit your needs and the way you teach your introductory accounting courses. We have more of that sole proprietorship approach, which will be the Fundamental Accounting Principles 25, which is about 65% financial and 35% managerial. And then Principles of Financial Accounting, which is just the first 17 chapters of Fundamental Accounting Principles. There's also options for more of that corporate approach with our 2-semester Financial and Managerial Accounting book, which is a 50-50 split between financial and managerial topics. And then again, we have those full financial splits and full managerial splits. And then lastly, we have Financial Accounting Information for Decisions, which is the first of the Wild series to receive the 2-year digital update this spring. And John is going to go a little bit more in depth with that later on. So as you can see, we have a lot of different options for everyone. It's just a matter of figuring out which option is best to fit your needs. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to John and Jonathan to take it away.
Hey, thank you very much, Claire. Just before Claire leaves this page, I'm teaching out of this series this past year, the financial and managerial under the corporate approach. And Jonathan is teaching this past year under the non-corporate with the principles books and also with the financial accounting text. So we cover, at least this past year, we've taught out of every single one. Let me back up, and today's focus, even though it's not in the title, it's primarily driven by this whole discussion of evolution in accounting practice and accounting education that people have been talking about the past couple of years. I know the AICPA and the NASB have sort of, NASBA has kind of pushed the envelope a little bit on this, but the basic notion of evolution has been festering for the past 4 or 5 years, where sort of two themes have sort of from an undercurrent have arisen. And those two themes are primarily has to do with relevant content and having to learn that relevant content. So I'll be spending at least much of my part of the talk on learning and being efficient in delivering relevant content to our accounting and non-accounting students. And then the other thing that's been talked about a lot is emerging technology, a little bit broader than just data analytics alone, but just our students coming out with being comfortable and having some familiarity with the emerging technologies. And in fact, just last week we were at a panel discussion, and the partners admitted that they oftentimes look to their new hires to clue them in on what are some of the emerging technologies in the practice arena right now. So that's sort of a backdrop, and I'm going to jump right in. In terms of a more specific agenda of this evolution, I'm going to be talking about how content is changing the past few years in the context of this evolution. And I'm going to focus primarily on the textual part initially, namely because of these other things that are cropping up, including emerging technologies. We have to be a little more efficient in how we deliver the textual materials. Then there'll be a little bit on data analytics, primarily on visualizations. Then we'll swing back to content again and talking about how we might be able to be efficient in delivering content via video. And then we'll swing again back to data analytics and talking about analytics in the terms of Excel. You know, Excel is not, like I tell my students, Excel is not your parents' Excel. I mean, it has really added some powerful tools in the last year or so, and it continues to develop. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what we can do to implement some of those tools in class. And then I'll conclude with some further evolution things regarding critical thinking. That's sort of our layout here for the next 50 minutes or so. In terms of the textual evolution, well, I know Claire wanted a question.
Yeah, so I'm going to put up this poll question. Do many of your introductory accounting students find textual content challenging? So I'm going to open it, and if you wouldn't mind answering it, that would be awesome.
Click
And
A.
John,
yes,
I should be able to close the poll and then share the results with you so you can see them when they come up.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, if you're
Interrupt me
unable
when
to-
you will.
Okay.
So as a little background to the content on the textual part, I would probably reference two things. And if you've heard me talk, I've referred to this research arena before. And that is there's this educational, more traditional part of the research arena. And one of the more seminal pieces has to do with how we deliver content and how students retain that content. So you'll see here, you know, don't quibble about the percentages, but the basic notion is held. And that is, as we introduce audiovisual aids, the retention of that information with our students increases. As we employ more demonstrations, the retention increases. As we do more practice by doing either active learning in class or homework, again, the retention is increased all the way down to teaching others, which drives breakout groups and student presentations. There's this other area of research which is equally important, if arguably not more important from a monetary standpoint in today's economy, and that's the internet design, delivery of materials. And in that arena, they talked about content, the importance of content being blocked, not only for searching purposes, but how students today learn. And psychologists will talk about this Google learning effect. And that refers to the fact that many of the individuals under 40 years old have held a mouse since they were in preschool. And that's affected how they learn. They look back at chunks, if you will, take away these blocks, and they go back and then they move ahead with that content going forward. And I'll talk about that. But the bottom line is what we need to do as educators then is identify the takeaways, whether our today's class or in our today's content materials. And that'll dictate how our course is laid out, or in this particular case, how our text is laid out. Now, within those blocks, the research tells us that we should employ at least 3 directives. And that is use a direct approach to your content, a concise approach, which is short and snappy, and a systematic approach from the standpoint of retention of materials for our students. All of this block material, they argue, should conclude with a demo, a demonstration. Now we use an acronym NTK. That's our acronym, stands for need to know. That's what we call our demos. And then finally at the end, for all our content, it should be reinforced. And that helps this mapping stuff that links all the way back here for this Google Learning that psychologists refer to. And then we introduce summary cheat sheets. So again, that's going to affect our textual, our video, and even our data analytics and emerging technologies. So I'm going to jump right in. As a overall scheme, you're going to see block content. So this is just to help us use a mnemonic device to help us remember. Within a block, direct, concise, systematic, and then remember at the end, reinforcement and mapping. Now, Claire, I probably didn't give you a break to jump in.
No worries. So for the people that answered, we had about 85% say yes, that they struggle, and about 15% said no. And then we had about 20 people that didn't answer.
Terrific. That's about the experience I have in my class too. So we share that. Now, let's systematically walk through that visual. So in terms of block content, what we have here is the old edition on the left, new edition on the right. And the old edition, nothing wrong with it, but it's laid out in a more traditional outline framework. And that is, we start with the background of capital budgeting. We go through non-present value and then present value methods. The block content research tells us we should identify the takeaways for our class, or in this particular case, the takeaways for capital budgeting. When we do that, and we talk about what's important for our students to walk away from those classes, is the payback period, the accounting rate of return, net present value, and internal rate of return. And now those form our blocks. So now we have 4 blocks for that particular content. Within each of those blocks, all of this content must be delivered, again, direct, concise, systematically. So we do that page by page, paragraph by paragraph. And then we conclude with a demonstration you'll see at the end of each block, need to know, NTK 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so let's jump in and look at within the blocks. So I'm going to give you examples for each. So direct, if you remember, that's the to the point, cut to the chase, if you will. So here was the last edition. That's the presentation of transactions to reports. The new edition, cut to the chase, oftentimes they encourage us as educators to use bullet points, especially for our introductory students. And if we can, introduce visuals. In this particular case, we did both. So we identify the bullet points for those steps, moving from transactions to reports, and we have the visuals that carry those students through. That's an example of direct. Again, page by page, we do this. From an example of conciseness, short and snappy, we look at a table here. This table has to do with net present value. And you'll see here, net cash flows, present value, no problem there. But you'll notice over here, when we looked at it, we had 8 years. And we stepped back and said, do we really need 8 years? And we really need 3 or more years to illustrate the concept. So look what we did in a new edition. We only have 3 years. And the table becomes much more digestible, less intimidating for our introductory students. We also see that the visual is easier to comprehend versus the large one. Here we have the outlay and only 3 inflows. So it's much easier for them, again, to comprehend, less intimidating. Then here's a combination for equivalent units of production. Now, if your students are like mine, that's a tough topic. I don't know why, but it always is, seemingly. And this is a combination of direct and concise. From a concise standpoint, you'll see the table here is about 8 rows. The table now is 3 rows. From a direct standpoint, you'll see we took the text here, nothing wrong with the text, laid out direct materials and conversion, but now we've introduced the bullet points, and furthermore, those bullet points link directly to the rows. So for example, up here we have direct materials, it's blocked in this unit right here. This bullet point leads to the second, this bullet points to the third. So we do this page after page in the new edition from the standpoint of trying to enhance the learning by our students and being efficient at it. And then we even had more room for this page. We added a graphic. This one happens to be a description of FIFO. So the graphic works nicely into the period that under study and then the beginning and ending. So it all worked out very nicely from a student standpoint, and students seem to have less questions this term. Direct and concise together, one statistic, it's hard to, other than single examples like that, but one statistic, both of them yield a fewer pages standpoint. So it's the same content. We haven't changed that at all, but fewer pages result all in the interest of more learning to enhance the learning of our students. Just from a standpoint of page count, the principles text lost 13%. The combo book, financial and managerial in total, lost 13, where 12 came from managerial and 14% came from financial. Again, all of this is less is more, as we sometimes hear that saying. And that's because we leaned on the period and leaned on science, all in the interest of enhancing learning for our students. I should mention that's even with 200 plus new assignments included, these statistics were realized. From the standpoint of systematic, remember we have direct, concise, systematic. So from the systematic example, I'll give you the overhead budget one. This one is the factory overhead budget right out of the chapter. And what we did is we said, well, is there an opportunity to make this sort of step A, B, C, or 1, 2, and 3? And sure enough, we said, well, we could label this paragraph and link it right down here in the table. So step 1 was to get the variable overhead. We put that in the margin in gray font so students can immediately see where that's linked in the table. We see that for fixed overhead, and then similarly for total overhead. Again, all in the interest, following the science here, trying to help our students be more efficient in their learning process. Okay, so now we're at the end. We went through the block, the takeaways, went through direct, concise, systematic, and now science tells us we should reinforce our education, our learning by our students. So 2 things here. One, we did the demos. Now I'm going to show those in a few minutes, so I'm just going to put those on pause. The other thing is reinforce or I should say here, reinforce with the summary. In our usual summary, if you remember back when we were students, the summary looks something like this. We'd probably have some kind of learning objective, and then there'd be text and be heavy text. And today we don't do that because science tells us introduce tabular displays, visuals, flow charts, pie charts, tables, whatever it is. And here's, this is ripped out of the merchandising chapter where we had 4 blocks, merchandising activities, merchandising purchases, and then we had sales and reports, which are not shown here. I just have 2 of them on. For the merchandising activities, remember our students, a lot of them are unfamiliar. So we introduce how that differs from the service company that we start our learning normally with an introductory course. Then we talk about the merchandising flows from purchases and beginning inventory over to cost of goods sold and ending inventory. We have some key definitions here. We go over to purchases. We have key definitions on credit terms. We move to the key journal entries that are blocked. And then also a big part of that is who's required to cover transportation from a legal standpoint. So we have the ownership transfer rules regarding shipping point and destination. So that's how 2 of the blocks, again, much different than this presentation over here that's text heavy. Okay, and then again, as I mentioned, I'll show these in just a second. So Claire?
So our next poll question, I'm going to open it up. Do you feel like your students could benefit from these learning science advances along with the summary cheat sheets that John just went over? You can either answer yes or no. All right, we're already getting lots of yeses, John.
Oh, terrific. So everybody's buying into the science here, and we're trying our darndest to stay with the science on this. So let me move forward to summarize this first part then on textual evolution. We got our block content, we have our direct, concise, systematic, we have our reinforcement here. Let me move on to the data analytics evolution and how that's changing our world. And I might even broaden that and say that's part of this emerging technologies, a little bit broader than just this alone. But from a data analytics, we always have to remember there's probably at least 2 subgroups we'd oftentimes identify. One is the more traditional analytics part, and that's the process. Oftentimes you'll see people talk about inspecting, cleansing, transforming data, and so on. And that fits in different parts, usually down here, and maybe you could argue maybe up here in creating. From a visualization standpoint, that's the graphical representation of data and for insights and analysis. That's a little bit more fun maybe for our non-accounting students in particular. And we'll talk about why they might like that more. And that fits right up here in evaluating, analyze, and applying. So we're going to look at both of those, and Jonathan's going to talk about that. Before we do that, I wanted to show you at least one survey. I know we don't have to make the case for it, But this one is interesting because it talks about the percentage of executives that identify various tools in data analytics. And what they identified, you'll see the top three. Number 3 is reporting. 50% identified that. So what you and I do in the classroom is still critically important to executives. But you'll notice what's moved way up here in the 80 and 90% range. The first one, the most important, understand dashboards, both from an accountant communicating that to the users and also from our non-accountant students that we teach, a lot of those in financial and managerial and principles, having them being able to work with those dashboards. And then the visualizations would obviously impact the accountant and the non-accounting student. One thing I'll note, Rick Gallagher, who heads up the AICP exam, 2 weeks ago, AICP had a webcast, and he mentioned that, well, I'll just read it. We need to assess data analytics, no doubt. And they're going to do that now. And we have come up with ways to do that by virtue of presentations, whether they be tables, whether they be visualizations. The only point here is that if we're introducing emerging technology in our classroom, visualization is really crucial that become part of that package. So Claire, you had a question?
Yes. So our next question is, for your introductory accounting course, you are either A, not looking to add data visualizations, or B, looking to add data visualizations. And I have gone ahead and opened up the poll for you.
Okay, again, Claire, interrupt me. Now, one other thing we did, in addition to this background, we also looked at the learning science in this area. And a lot of interesting work is being done here, but 3 things kind of jumped off the page at us. One is that our brains process visuals 60,000 times faster than text. Just amazing. Infographics are 30 times more likely to be read than text. And then finally, 90% of information transmitted to our brains today is in visual form. So Claire, I'll give you a chance.
Yep. So we had about, let me see, I'm trying to do this math quickly here. About 90% of people say that they are looking to add, and 10% that they are not looking to add. And then we had about 20 people that haven't responded.
Terrific. You'll be excited to hear Jonathan start up here in just 1 minute. Data analytics checklist. Here's what we did as we tried to identify the emerging technology that would work in our classroom. We identified 4 wish list checklist items. 1, we don't have room in our class to just add things at will. So we didn't really want an add-on project. Number 2, we didn't want to have any analytics training required. That's both for us, quite frankly, and students are coming in with no analytics background for the most part. No added software required. I've been burned in the past with those kind of things, difference between Apple and PC and different versions, how old they are. Didn't want to deal with that. And my final wish list, if it's possible, auto-graded and then connect. That's quite a wish list. Well, what Jonathan pointed out was, you know, our materials that we deliver to students on a daily basis has a lot of this, a lot of textual material and a lot of tabular information being relayed. And who says we can't deliver all that information via a dashboard? So what we did, and that's to primarily not add an add-on project, we took a lot of the key assignments and we put them in a dashboard framework, and we answered the same question. Now that enabled us to swap out assignments, but I should mention, in terms of swapping out the assignments, we created 3 different levels of those kind of assignments. So again, following this layout here, we went to quick studies, which are primarily just, can they read dashboards? Which is important, right? For non-accounting students, which make up 80, 90% of my students. Exercises carry it a little bit further. They have to apply the data. For example, if we deliver some uncollectible accounts data, can they grab the right data and compute an aging schedule? And then finally, mini case. They take it a little bit step further, have some interpretation, some decision making. And Jonathan, why don't you take over and show some of these examples of what we do in our classroom right now in terms of swapping out this right here, these traditional assignments, to and putting instead of it those these.
Yeah, that sounds great. And let me share my screen here. And can you see it clearly?
I can't. Try
Yes.
it again.
I think we're seeing it. It's Quick Study 1-7.
Okay, thanks, Steve. All right, great. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump straight into my Connect course and show you how over just the last couple years, I've taken those traditional assignments that convey information in tables and paragraphs of information and began to swap them with Tableau dashboard activities that are going to cover the same accounting concepts. So the first one we have here is an example of a traditional assignment. And so here, students are given assets, they're given equity, and they're asked to solve for liabilities. So they're supposed to use their knowledge of the accounting equation, something we're all probably covering in the first week of our class. Now, what I've did in my class, and again, this was just in the last couple years, is I've taken that traditional assignment and I've swapped it now with a Tableau dashboard activity that covers the exact same introductory accounting concept. So before I get into the accounting side of this, let me just explain how these Tableau dashboards work. And full disclaimer right away, I want to put it out there is I don't have Tableau installed on this machine. I don't install any software to run these dashboards. If in my class, if my students they have Chromebooks, they have PCs, they have Macs, all different kind of years, whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as they can open Connect in their web browser, they can run these Tableau dashboard activities. And that's just a big deal for me because I don't want to be tech support for 100 different students who are running through my class every year. So that's a big deal for me as an instructor. And so now to work with these dashboards, so it's loading live in Connect, and to interact with these cool visuals, all you have to do is take your cursor and start hovering over different parts of these graphics. And immediately it becomes interactive and students begin gathering information. So let's look at the accounting equation data for Nero's company. So for Nero's company, we'll see that the company has liabilities of $36,000, equity of $74,000, and we're asking our students to solve for total assets. Okay, so with that information, what students would do is come down here, scroll to the bottom, and start to fill out their assignment. So we had, I believe it was liabilities of $36,000, equity of $74,000, and now if students know their accounting concepts, right, that's basically one of the first things we teach in the accounting equation, they'll know that liabilities of $36,000 plus equity of $74,000 should give us assets of $110,000. So in all of these Tableau dashboard activities, they're always using that introductory accounting knowledge. All right, and then another thing that I enable in my class, okay, and this is something you can turn on or off. So I'll usually enable it for homework, turn it off for exams, but this is check my work. So students can check their work and they immediately get a positive check mark that, yeah, they're on the right path to solving this assignment. And actually the cool thing about this though is, as we alluded to earlier, is everything here is auto-gradable. So what does that mean in my class is all of these things, all of these Tableau dashboard activities my students are doing in my class, everything's feeding right into my grade book. I just couldn't imagine, grading hundreds of different Tableau projects every single semester. It would just, it wouldn't be possible. One other really cool thing I want to show you about this Tableau dashboard activity is that not only do they help us as instructors assess our students' knowledge of those key accounting concepts, but they also help us visually convey them to students. And well, what do I mean by that? Let's just take a quick look at Nero's again. So if you look at Nero's, the asset bar height right here, the bar height is of the same bar height as the liabilities and equity bar. So what accounting concept is that conveying to our students? Well, it's assets equals liabilities plus equity. So this is something, right, I've written right up on the whiteboard probably a couple times in class. They've watched videos, they've read about it in the book, but now for the visual learners in my class, and I have a lot of them, it starts to click, and it's a big deal for them. So I really like that part of it too. Now I'm going to jump a few chapters ahead in my class, and I'm going to jump ahead to the accounts receivable chapter. And basically every chapter I cover in my course, I'm covering have at least 2 or 3 dashboard activities in there. So now I'm going to jump ahead again to accounts receivable and show you 3 examples of traditional assignments. In this one, students are using the percent of accounts receivable method, and they're given an estimate of uncollectibles for accounts receivable. They come down here and do a journal entry. So again, if we're covering accounts receivable, we're probably covering the percent of accounts receivable method. And then we got to have another traditional one, percent of sales method. Basically the same kind of assignment, but now they're using the percent of sales method. A third type, here we have aging of receivables method, okay? And here we give students information in kind of a tabular approach, right? We give them accounts receivable broken down into different categories, and then percents tied to each of those amounts. They use that, they come over here and do a journal entry. So those are 3 examples of traditional assignments I had in my class about a couple years ago. Now what I've did is I've taken those 3 traditional assignments and swapped them with a Tableau dashboard activity that, you guessed it, is going to cover the exact same accounting concepts. And also, just to be clear, those traditional assignments, they're not going anywhere. Most of my class is still comprised of those traditional assignments, so you can still assign them, but I just began to swap those just in my class. All right, so now before we get into before we look at the dashboard, let's just figure out what we want our students to do here. So for part 1, we're going to ask our students to estimate the allowance for doubtful accounts using the percent of sales method. Okay, now if students know their accounting concepts, if they understand the percent of sales method, they're going to come up in their dashboard and try to find some information related to sales. Okay, here's a graphic on sales, and we have some cash sales. Well, but cash sales, that's cash in hand. There's no, my students, they'll think, well, there's no risk of uncollectibles there. But credit sales, there's a risk there, right? So we have 7.15 million of credit sales, and tied to that 7.15 million, the company is estimating 1% of those will be uncollectible. So they take their 7.15 million, times it by 1%, and my students come down here, 71,500. And again, they can use check my work. That's something you can turn on or off as an instructor. And immediately they get a positive check mark. That fills right into my gradebook. Everybody's happy. Let's take a look. Let me jump ahead to requirement 3 then. So in requirement 3, we're asking our students to estimate the allowance for doubtful accounts using the aging of accounts receivable method. So again, if students know aging of receivables, they're going to go up to their dashboard and they'll say, okay, I need some information on accounts receivable by age. And here we got it. Accounts receivable broken down into 5 different categories. So let's just grab the amount from not yet due. So we have 830,000. And again, here, all I'm doing is simply taking my cursor and working over different parts of this graphic. No software required. So we got 830,000. And now we need a percent uncollectible tied to each of those. So they scroll down a little bit and they see, okay, percent uncollectible by age. For not yet due, we estimate 2% of that 830,000. And then they'd come down here, my students would come down here and start filling out the table. So they type in 830,000 times the 2% we estimated, and then they can do check my work, and they get a positive check mark that they're on the right path. So I think you guys are kind of getting the point here now with these Tableau dashboard activities. These assignments, they don't assess students' knowledge in anything new per se. We're still teaching our students the same introductory accounting concepts. They're still learning those key things we need them to get out of introductory accounting. But instead of coming up and getting information from a big table or a big paragraph of information, instead students are getting their data from Tableau dashboards. And what does that help our students to develop? Well, it helps them develop skills in data analytics and visualization, skills our employers are telling us they want our students to have, but it's all at an introductory level. Second, it also allows them to become familiar with Tableau, which, as we know right now, is the most popular tool in data analytics and visualization right now. So that's really cool, and that's why I assigned them in my class. Let me show you another one. This is jumping ahead again to the financial statement analysis chapter. And I think this dashboard is pretty cool. And in this assignment, the company breaks down their financial statement data into different regions of the United States. Okay. And let's figure out what we want our students to do with that information. So for part one, we're going to ask our students to compute profit margin in the West and Southwest region. So my students come up here and they say, okay, the West region. Okay, West region, they have net income of 22,000, net sales of 110,000. If they know their accounting concepts, if they know how to compute profit margin, they'll take that 22,000, divide it by 110,000, and they can come down here and that would give them 20%. We also have to get it for the Southwest region. So they come back up here. For the Southwest region, we have net income of 17,600, net sales of 80,000. They divide those two numbers. Again, if they understand their accounting, they come down here and that would give them 22%. They can check my work, something you can turn on or off as an instructor, and they figure out they're on the right path. All right. One other thing. So for the exercise and mini case level assignments, for those assignments I assign in my class, I like those because they introduce a little bit of critical thinking. And what I mean by critical thinking is it's not some advanced level analysis or advanced pivot tables or Python programming involved. It's all introductory accounting critical thinking. So let's take a look at requirement 2. So it asks students in which region examined in part 1 has the company best performed on profit margin. Well, if students understand profit margin, if they use those critical thinking skills, they'll know that a company would want a higher profit margin. And the region with a higher profit margin is the Southwest region. So they can come down here, type in Southwest, and check my work. Again, all the analysis portion too is everything's auto-gradable, fills right into my grade book, and they get a positive check mark. Okay. Now I want to jump ahead again, and this is to managerial accounting. So when I teach managerial accounting, I also always cover at least 2 or 3 Tableau dashboard activities in each chapter. So here's an example of a traditional assignment. And so this traditional assignment, students are given beginning raw materials inventory, ending raw materials inventory, materials purchased for the month, and then we're asking our students to solve for materials used. Okay, so this is kind of a classic managerial relation, something, again, we're all probably covering the first couple weeks of our managerial course. Now what I've did in just the last couple of years is I've taken that traditional assignment and swapped it with a Tableau dashboard activity that, again, is covering the same managerial concepts. So here we can look here at this dashboard, and we see that we're giving students beginning raw materials inventory, materials purchases, ending raw materials, and we're asking our students to solve for direct materials used. The exact same kind of question we've been asking them, like I said, for years. Nothing new. But instead of students going up to a paragraph or a table of information, now they're using Tableau dashboard activities that are also visually conveying those key managerial concepts. Again, like I talked about in financial, here we have beginning raw materials plus raw materials purchases. That bar length right there is of the same bar length as materials used and ending raw materials. Again, I have a lot of visual learners in my class, and that's a big deal. So one more Tableau dashboard I want to show you. And again, this is from the managerial side. Here we have students looking at inventories, okay? And so you can right away see the 3 classic kind of managerial inventory accounts. And you can see raw materials for that inventory account. You can see from a month-to-month basis, they're increasing again for work in process and for finished goods. Now, if we just gave students a paragraph of information, that probably wouldn't be readily apparent. But now when we put it in a dashboard, they can more easily see that. But so with that, actually, I'm going to turn it back over. Thanks.
Terrific. I think Claire wants to ask a question here. Let me share my screen again.
Yes. So after seeing the Tableau dashboard activities live for your introductory accounting courses, do you think that these are too much for your students, just about right for your students, or too easy for your students? And I'm going to go ahead and open up that poll.
Can you see my screen?
Yep, sure can.
Terrific. Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds while I grab my pen here.
And John, we're already getting that these are just about right for their students.
Oh, terrific. Jonathan will breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, so as Jonathan already alluded to, if you're not using them, I would encourage you, just try them next week. just identify a few of the dashboards, swap maybe one assignment or a couple or few, and do them as extra credit. That's how I started in my class 4 semesters ago. Now what I do is, as Jonathan pointed out, I do the same thing. I swap the assignments for the dashboard. Probably about 20 to 25% of my assignments have been taken out. And just like this, take this one out, and I ask the same thing over here with the dashboard. Okay, 2 items left. One is to do the video evolution. As we know, with the popularity of YouTube, TikTok, etc., videos are a big deal with today's learners. And research tells us that long-term learning is 80% higher with video versus text. Also, we are 75% more likely to watch a video versus text. I think that's particularly if you're younger. And another one that's really important is learning retention from a video is 25% higher if the video includes questions. So the design of the video is also really important. So here's what we did. We created 3 different categories of videos. We have concept overview, which are like mini lectures. Need to know, which we already talked about. Those are the demos. And then the hint videos. Importantly, we can turn these on or off, but they sort of take students' hand and walks them through the assignment. And some people like that, some people don't. I tend to turn them on the first day we cover a topic, and the second or third day I turn them off. So let's look at examples of each. You can have a chance to give you some references. You can go back to these and watch them, but I'm just going to hit a few highlights. One, you'll notice they're short. This one has to do with computing equivalent units of production. A lot of visual, right, that are naturally part of videos. Short. They also have that knowledge check. Remember that result from Learning Science, 25% more learning retention if you have questions. These have questions, and these questions also, it's cut off here, but there's an explanation so the student is not left hanging. If they get it wrong, it marches them through that solution. Also, for you and I, we can assign points for these or not. What I do is I assign about 5% of my course, so it's not very much, but it's enough to get them to watch these mini videos. Then we have the demos. These demos are both at the end of each block. I'll just refer to them as need to know block demos. Again, you'll notice they're shorter based on Learning Science. Again, very visual. Instructor walks through equivalent units of production again. Here, there's also a comprehensive need to know video. Jonathan and I put those together at the end of each chapter. Those are, by nature, those are like problems. So they have multi-parts, and this one here is 12 minutes for job order costing. Just takes up more time to go through a comprehensive. Again, you can decide if you encourage your students or not. And then finally, the last one are these hint videos that are associated with the majority of our assignments. This one here has to do with applying overhead to a job. And again, you'll notice they're short, snappy, and the demo is satisfied. So, Claire?
Sorry. So the next question that we have is, would concept overview, need to know demo, and hint videos help your students learn? And you can either enter yes or no.
Okay, so Claire, interrupt me. One thing that we have, we've prepared orientation videos for each of these. So if you're uncomfortable, you can watch these just to make sure you're aware of those. I do assign this one at the start of the term for my students, but these other ones, they're better than I am at using videos, so they're into it. Okay, the last big item for today is integrated Excel evolution. Again, it's not your parents' Excel anymore. And again, we're going to focus, there's 2 parts. We're going to focus on the analytics part, and that's the process of inspecting, cleansing, transforming, working with the data as opposed to graphical representation. And this checklist is getting old, but it's very important for us. No add-on project, no analytics training, no software, etc. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take our problems that are applicable, and we're going to identify those. This one here is perfect for Excel, and we're going to put it in an integrated Excel that runs without even having Excel on your machine, which is really important for these kind of things, right? That checklist item. And Jonathan's going to show us a couple right now.
Great. And Claire, if you wouldn't mind passing it over to me, thank you. And I see we have a couple questions coming in. So feel free to put those in the chat and in the Q&A. And at the end, we'll go through all of the questions and make sure we don't miss those. But again, please feel free to put them in there. Okay, so similar to how I did with Tableau dashboard activities in my course, in which I've been taking traditional assignments and swapping them with Tableau dashboard activities, I've been doing the exact same thing with integrated Excel just in the last semester since these things have become available. So again, I want to show you an example of a traditional assignment. Here students are given some information on income statement accounts, and they're supposed to use their knowledge of income statement relations to solve for these missing amounts. So they have to understand that sales minus discounts minus returns and allowances give them net sales, minus cost of goods sold give them gross profit, okay? So they use those relations to solve these questions. Now in my class, and again, just the last semester, I've swapped it with an integrated Excel assignment that's going to cover the exact same thing. It's the exact same assignment actually. And so as you can see here now, I'm loading integrated Excel right in my web browser. In fact, I'm actually running a Mac computer. So again, just like the Tableau dashboards, integrated Excel will run in Chromebook, Mac, PC, all the same way. As long as students can open up, connect in a web browser, it'll run fine. No issues with what year you're running, what version of Excel. Everything runs right in the web browser, and it'll be the same for all students. So when students open the integrated Excel assignments, they'll get this important notice right away. And what it's telling my students is that it's telling them that they have to use a formula to answer this assignment. And this is something you can turn on or off as an instructor, but I strongly encourage you to require them to use formulas. And the reason is because if you don't require them to, then students can simply grab their calculator and do all the calculations right on their calculator and not have to use any of the functions or formulas in Excel. So again, I would encourage you to use that, but it's an option for us. All right, now let's take a look at the Excel part. Okay, so again, this is the exact same assignment I just showed you, now running live in Excel right on the web browser. So let's just solve for sales here. So to get sales, we'll start with net sales. We'll add back in returns and allowances, and then we'll add back in discounts, okay? And that'll help us compute our sales amount. To compute cost of goods sold, we take net sales, subtract gross profit, and that would get us our cost of goods sold. And now, similar to the Tableau dashboards and in pretty much any assignment in Connect, they also have a check my work feature. And again, this is something you can turn on or off as an instructor for your students, but the student would get a positive check mark right away that, yeah, they're on the right path to solving this assignment. But from an instructor perspective, this is also maybe even cooler because all of these, everything in these integrated Excel assignments, everything's auto-gradable, everything fills right into our gradebook. So again, I could not imagine grading hundreds of Excel spreadsheets every year. That would just burn me out. So this is huge for me in my class. Everything auto-gradable. Another cool thing about these integrated Excel assignments is, like I said earlier, how in my class I require them to use formulas. And if any of us have ever used Excel in practice or in any other way, we know that there's often 2 or 3 or maybe 4 different ways you can get a number in Excel in a reasonable way. And so integrated Excel will accept pretty much any function or formula that gets students to the correct answer in an efficient and effective way. So let me just show you for sales. So the first time I added all of those 3 cells together just individually, but maybe a little bit faster, I could have used a sum function, especially if we had a lot of data. So I'll just use the sum function here, grab all 3 of those cells, close my parentheses. I get the same answer. The students can check my work, and it fills in as correct right into my gradebook. So that's pretty cool. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump out of this one. I'm going to show you another integrated Excel assignment. Okay, so we'll leave this one, and we'll jump ahead again. So I'm going to be jumping a little bit around in my class. So here we're kind of jumping ahead to a debt chapter, and we're going to open up another integrated Excel, this time on straight line amortization. And again, if you're teaching effective interest, Those are also available. I usually leave them to intermediate, but again, either one you're teaching or both, that's fine. They're available. So as you can see, we get a little bit more difficult with how we use integrated Excel, but it becomes even more useful as we get into a little bit more difficult assignments. And another key thing I want to point out is in my class, at least, I have students who are 18 years old, just out of high school, never used Excel. Okay. So this kind of environment is perfect for them. It's very non-intimidating. It runs right in their web browser. There's no issues with installing Excel, nothing like that. It just runs, right? So that's great for them. Now, for my students who maybe are coming back to school or just coming to school later in life, maybe worked in practice for 10 years and have those Excel skills, maybe from some job they had before, they absolutely love these integrated Excel assignments. And the reason that is they can do all of their introductory assignments, not all of them, but a portion of them in integrated Excel. And they love that because now they can use their formulas and different functions and some of those intermediary calculations that now they can just drag the formula across the table. So they love it too. So again, in my opinion, it's great for both ends of the spectrum for students, and whether they have a lot of experience or no experience in Excel. I'm just going to jump a little bit ahead here again. Here we have installment note. You can kind of start thinking about how, if we insert that interest rate and do that amortization table, how integrated Excel could be really useful. And then also jumping ahead to managerial. It's, again, very useful. You can see here we have kind of a classic managerial kind of assignment. They have to solve for cost of goods manufactured, but they're missing different amounts. And again, I'm going to take that same traditional assignment and swap it with an integrated Excel assignment that, again, is going to look exactly the same. And I don't even need to open that up for you guys because I think you get the point. And then again, managerial, you even think about when I get to departmental expense allocations, my students love using Excel for that. Some of those, again, those intermediary calculations, they can drag those formulas down and it makes it way quicker and way faster, but they're still learning those key managerial concepts. And again, we even get to net present value. I think you can immediately see how integrated Excel could be useful there. So real quickly, before I switch it back over, I'm going to show you quickly where to find these integrated Excel assignments, okay? And if I'm going too quick for you, everything's being recorded. Claire's going to send out a link to the recording after this session. So again, you can slow me down, pause me, whatever. So to find them, you go to Add Assignment, right? And then you go to your question bank, right? Where you find your quick studies, exercises, problems, everything, test bank. All right. And then right at the top of it, you'll see Accounting Integrated Excel. So you click there and we'll have integrated Excel assignments. You can throw them right into your class for every single chapter in your course. And I think that's it. With that, I'm going to turn it right back over.
Jonathan, can you just click on one of the chapters just to show how they're named?
Oh, yes, you bet.
Asking,
So
there you go.
So I'll just so for here's in chapter 4, and we talk about their named just like our quick studies, exercises, and problems would be. So we have integrated Excel quick study 416. So if you're covering already quick study 416 and you want to say, hey, I want to throw right in an integrated Excel assignment, swap it out, you'll see the name description right in that assignment title. And Steve, was there anything else you wanted to say about that?
No, that's perfect. And Lakshmi's already said thank you. So very good.
Right.
Claire, can you give me control again?
All right, you should be able to share your screen now, John.
Terrific. Okay, so I'm going to go full screen again. If you haven't used these yet, I would encourage you, I'm going to grab a pen here. You'll notice this exhibit, very similar to one we just had up, right, for data analytics. I would encourage you, and I just did this. This is just coming on right now, this term. So I just did my first extra credit assignment 2 weeks ago, and it worked out terrific. And I'm going to introduce a couple more. I'm not at this stage yet, but I'm going to start next term now because this has worked out well so far. Then, as Jonathan pointed out, we have that list of quick studies and exercises. I'm going to swap those out for some of the other ones. Again, I'm not ballooning my course. I'm actually just swapping out certain questions to allow students to get some analytic skills. and Excel is moving with the times. So Claire has a poll question.
Yep, so this is the last poll question. For your introductory accounting courses, integrated Excel activities are too much for your students, about right for your students, or too easy for your students? Oh, wow. And a ton of people are already answering, and a majority are saying about right.
Wow, that's terrific. Wonderful. Okay, last item, some further evolution issues. This kind of grew out of, if nothing else, a panel presentation we had last week where we had some partners from different large CPA firms, and they mentioned, what's the number one item that you want out of your students that are graduating right now? And the number one thing everybody was expecting, I think, data analytics or some kind of emerging technologies, and it was critical thinking. Critical thinking. So let's talk a little bit about that, what we've done in our own content and our own classes. We have a section that's been there for quite a while. It's called Decision Analysis, to introduce this notion of critical thinking. And that's here, and this one here is just example in chapter 3 on profit margin. And we have Visa and MasterCard's profit margin. We compare them head to head. But we've also done in the end of chapter assignment materials, we have 3 different ones that are all in Connect now. And they're all focused on critical thinking, evaluation, decision-making, and so on. They typically focus on that section using a tool. This one here, for example, compares Apple and Google. By the way, I should mention the company analysis normally focus on Apple. The comparative analysis typically focus on Apple and Google. And the extended analysis is usually a Samsung. And oftentimes Samsung is compared to Apple and Google or both. So in this one here, we had accounts receivable turnover was introduced in chapter 3. So we use that one for the comparative analysis. And then we compare the companies on which one collects their accounts receivable more quickly. Again, it's pushing the envelope a little bit on critical thinking. See how much comfort level you have, if at all. If you do, feel free to use these. I've been introducing them sparingly so far. The last thing I want to mention is, if you remember the last 10 years, a lot of things have changed, from revenue recognition, accounting for investments, lease disclosures, a lot, right? Well, it's kind of quieted down the last couple of years. So we're going to breathe a sigh of relief. We have the current edition out right now, and we're not going to do a new edition for the next 4 years because we don't see anything on the horizon to put that burden on all of us as instructors. So I'm wiping my forehead and saying, thank goodness. But what we're going to do, we know that technology continues to evolve. So we're going to have a mid-edition, a technology update. So you're not going to have to change any text at all for 4 years, but you'll have some technology tools if you want to use. And what we're working on right now, you already saw the integrated Excel. We're going to create some other things too that have students do some cleansing of data and so forth. But that's taken a little bit further, but at least if you're so excited, that might move you. We're going to also have some new Tableau. We're experimenting with algorithmics with Tableau right now. We're also going to look at maybe some Connect exercises in the test bank. So adding a little more richness to the test bank itself. And then we're introducing potentially maybe some data analytics projects. And then we're working on thinking about some new videos based upon the student learning environment, being more efficient in our delivery. And then also there's some new Connect features. So this is all part of this technology update. But we'll get back to you. That's just telling you what we're kind of working on. But again, don't expect a new text for 4 years, just because the regulatory environment is hopefully static right now. I also wanted to mention, I use Proctorio in my classroom. I do that to increase the integrity of my exam. Steve and Claire can talk about more of that later if you're interested, but I use that. So in summary, what we have is we have the new content, more efficient delivery, all in the interest of enhancing learning. We have these Tableau dashboards, important for accounting students, but also our non-accounting students, just as important. I should mention, these dashboards have far exceeded what we thought we'd have, but we have nearly 1.6 million views of those Tableau dashboard activities, exceeded our wildest expectations. We're also introducing content with video things. We talked about that, integrated Excel, you just saw Jonathan, and then these further evolution things. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. I always love hearing from you. Here's my email. Here's Jonathan's email. Feel free to call us. You might not reach me live this term. I'm teaching 3 sections in person, and I'm also teaching 1 section online that has 300 students in. So I don't have much time to answer phones, but leave me a message if you want to talk to me, and I promise I'll call you back. And then Steve and Claire, always available. They're great resources, and we're open to questions or hanging on as long as you want to hang on if you have questions. So feel free to unmute yourself, and we're here.
Yeah, so we've had a few questions come in here, so I'll try to get to all of them, and I apologize if I miss yours, but please just stick in the chat if we wrap up and I didn't get your question. So I'll try to go in order. So the first one from Charlotte was, will the visualization techniques be in the annotated exercises? Will the visualization techniques be included in the PowerPoints? So unfortunately, the Tableau dashboard activities that we showed you, that's live Tableau running right in Connect. So unfortunately, that'd be a little, we're not able to, I guess, take those Tableau dashboard activities and make them interactive right in Excel because they have to connect to the internet and different things like that. So unfortunately, can't get those into the PowerPoints. But I think that, I don't really think that you even, like, for example, in my class, and I know my dad's class too, he runs a huge online class with over 300 students. And I run a little bit smaller, usually about 60 students. And we assign Tableau dashboard activities in our class, right in our assignments, even in our exams. We don't even make students aware of that there's a different kind of assignment. They just go right in. It's immediately interactive. They're moving their cursor. I don't think there's any reason you would need to talk about it in class ahead of time or devote any class time to it. It's just so interactive and so intuitive. Students just dive right in. And that includes students, again, I have some who are 18 years old. I have some who are 60 years old. They both just pick it up immediately. It's such an easy tool to use. But again, thanks for that question, Charlotte. I think we got another question here. I can't see the name, unfortunately, but I can read the question. In the Excel that is similar to the end of chapter question, is there an indicator that tells me there's an integrated Excel? So not next to the exercise or quick study, not next to the traditional one, but I would jump right back into Connect into your assignment builder. And how I showed you, that's again recorded about 15 minutes ago. We break down like this integrated Excel is linked to quick study 15 or it's linked to exercise 22. So if you want to get those integrated Excel assignments, I would start there and then look at your assignment and see where you could swap something in and out. So again, thanks for that question. Let me see what else we got here. I would love to demonstrate how to use Excel formulas with the exercises and PowerPoints. So to demonstrate Excel formulas, instead of putting them in PowerPoints, they're actually available. You can find how to use demonstrations on how to use formulas right in videos in Connect. And Claire, if you're still there, if you could make me the host, I can quickly show people where to find those. So let me get Google Chrome open.
Yep. And Jonathan, as you're doing this, I do know that we are past time. So I just want to let everyone know that if you need to jump off, no worries. We will be sending the recording out. But if you want to stick around to see what Jonathan's about to show and answer some of these questions, please feel free to.
You bet. So if we go right back into our assignment builder where we find all of our assignments again, right where we find our quick studies, exercises, and problems, right below Accounting Integrated Excel, there's something called Applying Excel. And Applying Excel is a little bit different than Integrated Excel, in which we actually use if you want to use the real Excel program. And but what it also allows you to do, these assignments are more focused on a specific kind of Excel formula or skill. So like here we have one on the present value function for if you cover bond pricing in your course. And here we have a video here that'll walk students directly through how to use a PV function for assignments in their class. And it'll also allow you to assign an assignment as well, then a few follow-up questions. So that's, in my opinion, that's the best resource, because let's say you're teaching online or you want to, even if you're teaching in person, you want to offload this to students outside of class, this video will walk them through directly how to use that PV function in Excel. So again, thank you for that question. Let me see if I can pull up the others. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see the questions. So I think we had a question, where are the integrated Excel resources? And that was from Charlotte. We talked about that a little bit earlier, but let me show you again. So if we go again back, just right back to our question bank, right? Like we're adding a question right in Excel. Oops. Can you still see my screen?
No, no, there we go.
Okay, there we go. And so if you go back, just like you were to add an assignment, any other assignment, or a quick study exercise, you go right to Accounting Integrated Excel. It's right up at the top. You can't miss it. You click on Integrated Excel, and we have the assignments broken down by chapter. Every single chapter of your course would be available here. You click on it, and it'll provide you with a list. So let's say this is the cash chapter. Here we have a couple on a bank reconciliation, one preparing a balance sheet. And you can just immediately add those to existing exercises or create a new exercise if you wanted to do that as well. So I hope that answers that question. Again, I'll try to get the chat open again here, see if I can answer some more.
And can you step back to the one directory to the Accounting Integrated Excel
Yes.
and click on the top bank up at the top, the formerly Sims bank up here?
Okay.
I want to point this out because I pointed out that this is another set of them that if you look in the grid, it shows what functions are covered in each of these, and these might be good ones to go through in class to not only teach this concept, but to teach the functions that are related, and then you could be assigning those quick studies and exercises that you swap out. But these would make good presentation kind of examples to go through in class.
Yep, Steve's exactly right. Here we have one on bond pricing, and this will kind of walk them through how to use the present value function. Again, if you're covering that in your course. But yeah, there's a lot of great resources there. And again, that's if you were to go to Integrated Excel, and then right up at the top, Accounting Integrated Excel problems. And those aren't broken down by chapter, they're right up at the top there. But again, great questions. Was there anything I missed? I'm looking in the chat function. Was there anything in the Q&A that I can answer for you guys?
I think we
I
pretty
think
much
Steve- Yeah, I think Steve picked up those.
yeah, I think we're covered here. So
Great.
again, appreciate everyone's attendance, and I think I'm going to sign off.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. Don't feel free, or I should say, feel free to reach out to Jonathan and I at any time. Have a great rest of the day.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.